Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be going over the most recent hero reveal brought to us by our good friends over here at 3 Floating. As you're looking at my screen, kind of talk about Maxx, Nitro, the new mechanologist hero. They revealed the young version of Maxx. I'm assuming we're going to be getting an adult version. We're going to talk about Maxx, their abilities, and kind of talk about just some general archetypes and thoughts about the hero and just the general excitement of a new hero reveal. So we'll get right into it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Feel free to check out my other Flesh and Blood content as well as Alpha Clash content on the channel. And then also, thank you so much again for clicking on the video. If you're a long-standing supporter, y'all are great as always. Feel free to check out the Patreon and the Discord down below. So before we get into the hero reveal, I've started on Twitter because I just want to shout out 3 Floating. Go follow these people. Amazing humans. They do really awesome, funny content. When it comes to just like branding and style, in all honesty, this is not a shot at any other creator. They are probably the best when it comes to having their own unique feel and look and style. And coming from someone who works as a marketing manager, like seeing this type of stuff in the game is really, really cool. They just have their own look. They have this like old school kind of like Back to the Future-esque, I guess is the best way to put it, like arcadey style, almost like cheesy 80s, 90s movie type stuff vibe. It's really fun. You got to go watch their stuff. But they did their recent hero reveal for the Bright Lights, the official Maxx Nitro hero reveal, and they revealed Maxx. So Maxx, the young version, is a 4 intellect, 20 life hero that says once per turn action, pay 2 resources, create a hyperdriver token with 2 steam counters. Activate this ability only if you have boosted this turn. Hyperdrivers you control get crank. As it enters the arena, you may remove a steam counter from it. If you do, gain an action point. So essentially what Maxx does is Maxx makes yellow hyperdrivers, because red hyperdrivers start with 3 steam counters. The tokens that Maxx Nitro makes start with 2 steam counters. So Maxx's whole, I guess, archetype is to produce these hyperdrivers, which, if you're not familiar with what they do, hyperdriver enters the arena with 3 counters if it's a red, 2 if it's a yellow, and 1 if it's a blue. When it has no more counters on it, you destroy it. Once per turn effect, when you boost a card, remove a steam counter from hyperdriver and gain 1 resource. So hyperdrivers are used to, in my opinion, funnel aggro strategies or funnel boost strategies, right, which usually is an aggro strategy, and be able to utilize these 4 resources and be able to have really like efficient turns. When it comes to Maxx, Maxx is trying to make multiple of them. So Maxx, at least initially, seems that he's going to be more of a aggro-based hero. Or more of a tempo-based hero, I guess is the best way to put it. But this crank ability is really, really cool, and they had to do this because let's just talk about Nitro Mechanoid. It's probably the easiest thing to slot Maxx into, so being able to play a Nitro Mechanoid very quickly. If Maxx has the right cards in hand and does the right things, Maxx is going to be able to make Nitro Mechanoid on turn 3 if he draws them, if he draws the card. So being able to do that is really, really good, but it has this crank mechanic, and crank allows you to remove a steam counter in order to gain an action point. This will allow you to make multiple hyperdrivers. My initial thought, one, the thematics are awesome. This is completely different than any other type of hero they've made so far. No one's kind of had any steampunk or different look or feel for the most part. Definitely even different art style. Very, sort of like the Blade Runner art style. Or some of the other, like Warrior, back when we thought Warrior and Mechanologists were going to be like together in a thing. This is kind of a similar vibe. But overall, I'm really interested to see how this hero goes. So I made a little blitz deck here. I'm going to talk about some of the interactions I can already see initially from this hero that's really cool. And obviously you can apply this to a CC list just by making 3 copies of anything that's 2 and 2 copies of anything that's 1. The first thing I see is basically Maxx Nitro is going to make yellow hyperdrivers, for lack of a better term, right? Because they only come with 2 steam counters. Everybody's first thought of this was, if you look at Nitro Mechanoid, when you transform it, it takes your head, chest, arms, and legs equipment and your weapon and your 3 hyperdrivers, because you have to have 3 hyperdrivers on the field before you can activate it. It takes all what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those pieces, and you basically put them all underneath Nitro Mechanoid. And when you attack with it, you banish a card from under Nitro Mechanoid in order to attack for 5, right? So you can attack with it 8 times for 40 total damage. Well, the first concern when people saw Nitro or Maxx Nitro is that you can't banish tokens, right? And Maxx Nitro specifically says create a hyperdriver token. Well, apparently from what I've read from some of the judges that showed screenshots in the judge Discord, they're going to be basically changing it to where you can banish these tokens in order to, or banish them period to be able, or use the tokens period under Nitro Mechanoid, at least in general. I think they'll just exit play is the way I understand it, but we'll get 100% rules clarification on that, I'm sure, in an article. But being able to play this essentially on turn 3, there's a little bit of finesse with this because the way hyperdrivers work is every time you boost, they lose a counter. And if they have no counters on them, they immediately destroy it. It's not at the beginning of your turn. It says when hyperdriver has no steam counters on it, destroy it. So if you get to 0 counters midway through your turn, it will destroy immediately. So the reason that's important is because Maxx Nitro makes hyperdrivers with 2 steam counters on them. So your initial thought would be, okay, turn 1, you boost a 0 cost like 0 to 60, use 2 resources, make a hyperdriver. Turn 2, do the same thing. Boost, use a hyperdriver. When you do that, you're going to go down to 1, right? You're going to go down to 1 steam counter on the first token you made since it started with 2. And then on turn 3, let's say you make another one. Well, when you boost, that second counter is going to come off that very first token you made on turn 1, and then you no longer have 3 drivers on the field before, or you only have 1 driver on the field before you're able to make your third one. So what Maxx is going to have to do is either find a way to add a counter, couple of different ways. One, find a way to add counters back to these hyperdrivers in order to get it out by turn 3. Be able to make multiple hyperdrivers a turn to get Nitro Mechanoid out faster when you draw it, or draw into a hyperdriver itself and be able to play, out different things. So the first card we have to look at here is Crankshaft. Crankshaft's, I think, going to be a staple in this Maxx Nitro without seeing the new cards that he's going to get. Is going to be a staple in this because when Crankshaft is banished, pay for a boost cost, put a steam counter on hyperdriver you control. So if you have these in Rainbow in your deck, it's a 2 for 3, which isn't great value, and 2 for 4 is but 2 for 5 is not bad for a boost card, especially at a 3 block, obviously, and being able to just have a little bit greater chance of boosting away one of these and be able to put a steam counter back on a hyperdriver, it'll allow them to stay on the field longer. The second thought is cards like Blessing of Ingenuity. I think running a 1 or 2 of these, probably a 1 of it red would be really nice. You could it's aura, it's not item, but you're able to put this in and be able to get hyperdrivers maybe that you accidentally boosted away of some sort, or put in the banish zone. Like even after you use Nitro Mechanoid once, like being able to go back and get those hyperdrivers and at least use them for resources would be really nice. And then finally, just putting hyperdrivers in your deck in general. I thought of a turn 1 play, which would be nice to keep, obviously, put 2 hyperdrivers out and keep their counters on, is like play a card like whatever, a 0 cost boost. Like T-Bone, you boost, right? You're still at 1 action point. You pitch a blue, or you palp Achilles Accelerator to go up to 2 action points. You pitch a blue, play hyperdriver, which takes you down to 1 action point. It's in the field. Then use your last 2 floating for Max's ability to make 2 hyperdrivers. So now you have 2 hyperdrivers on the field, 1 with 3 counters on it, 1 with 2 if you're running red hyperdrivers. And then on turn 2, you can make your third hyperdriver. And then after that, you can just wait until you play defensive, trade until you draw into Nitro Mechanoid, right? There's a couple of different ways you could do it. So that's like I have a cool play line. I think overall, obviously, he's going to have a lot of low-cost boost attacks to be able to then pay one cost and below, because you want to be able to pitch a blue, pay 1, or pitch nothing, and then pitch your blue in order to pay for a hyperdriver. But you're going to have to do it pretty efficiently because you will lose hyperdrivers if you're not careful. So on base, he seems like really crazy. Like when I first saw this here, I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to be able to get Nitro Mechanoid out by turn 3, right? If you just play your hands normally. But you do have to do a little bit of hand management. Obviously, you're going to have to draw into Nitro Mechanoid in general. But you're also going to have to watch it because you can't just aimlessly boost, because since he makes yellow hyperdrivers and not red, that means they're going to be gone 2 turns later if you keep boosting, even just once a turn. So he's going to play a little bit mid-rangey until he gets his Nitro Mechanoid out, and then he's just going to ramp after that. There's also the funny thing of, like, if you get Nitro Mechanoid out too fast and your opponent is able to just deal with what you're trying to do and be able to survive, then all of a sudden you're stuck in the mid-game with no equipment, with a lot of boosted away cards and no weapon, right? It gets really bad really fast. So it's going to be really interesting. When you first read his ability, you think it's super, super good. And then as you really think about how the deck's going to function, it actually is very interesting. We have some other stuff in here. I think stuff like Pulse Wave Harpoon is going to be really good, just to have a little bit more. Magnetic Shockwave might be good. There's a bunch of different things that you could do when it comes to Maxx Nitro. But overall, super fun. This is literally just like 10 minutes of thought, right? It isn't really fleshed out, but I just want to kind of get your thoughts on it as a community, kind of see what y'all think about just the art style and the overall look. I really enjoy this. I love the expansion they're doing with the Mechanologist. Like, they're staying true to a lot of the original mechanics and original cards that Mechanologist had, but expand upon it perfectly, honestly. And I love, like, this little, like, side piece that they have here. It looks a little bit different than normal. So really excited for that. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what type of cards you think Maxx might get, because I think obviously Maxx is going to get cards that play into this archetype even more than what he already has, which shows me, I think, the power of the hero. Like, the hero already with no extra card pool, you could make this hero work with 0 extra cards. And the fact that we're going to get a whole set potentially to help play into his archetype makes it even crazier. So, let me know what your thoughts are. Love to hear them. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see y'all next time on TCG Talk.